In the NFL, it doesn't matter how you win. You could win by 40 points or by 1 point. You could win by scoring 4 touchdowns, or you could win on a blocked field goal. The number one most important thing to do, though, is win. That's what leads to sustained success and builds dynasties. And for the Chargers, their most recent victory over the Miami Dolphins proves that this is a team we need to watch and completely changes how we view their 2025 NFL season. What's up, everyone? I'm Sam Peña, a Bolt fan in the Berg for Chargers Digest, where we talk about all things Lightning. Today we're talking about a tough, gritty victory by the Chargers on the road in Miami against the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa. This is a game that we all circled before the season even began, as it's the matchup between Herbert and Tua, who were taken one pick apart from each other. There's been a long-running debate between some corners of the NFL world on which has been the more successful quarterback. I personally think Herbert has finally put that conversation to bed. He's been better almost his entire career, and on Sunday, he was the difference in that game. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I want to talk about some of the keys to victory and how the Chargers are finally showing the potential of the team they can be. So without further ado, let's talk about it. You obviously can't talk about this game without first mentioning Justin Herbert. He was phenomenal in this game, and when it came down to it, he made the biggest play of the game. On back-to-back plays, actually, on that final drive, the Dolphins had a chance to be able to take him down in the backfield. The first time, he just shook the defender and was able to throw the football away in the area of a receiver to avoid that intentional grounding call, giving the team 2nd and 10 instead of 2nd and 18. And then on 2nd and 10, the right tackle and right guard were completely beaten by the Dolphins. Jalen Phillips had Herbert in his arms, and Herbert made probably the craziest play I've seen in the NFL this year to switch his hands to avoid the strip sack, then shake Phillips off and somehow get the football out to McConkey, who then made a great play himself to be able to shake the defender and get upfield, putting the Chargers in field goal range to win that game. But the key to success for Herbert in this game was his offensive line. Now, the first 2 weeks of the season, the offensive line was pretty much flawless, and they were able to keep Herbert clean, even against a great pass rusher like Max Crosby. But then the injuries started to pile up, and in week 3 against the Broncos, we really saw how that offensive line play was kind of fool's gold as they just completely dominated the Chargers. And then obviously we know what happened in week 4 and 5. Herbert averaged 2.1 seconds to throw. In this game, though, he was only pressured on 30% of his dropbacks. Now, that's still not an ideal number to have for an NFL quarterback, but it's significantly better than the 50% they were giving up the last 2 weeks. So this is a better situation for the Chargers, and it showed in terms of just how Herbert played. When you look at just the raw box score stats, he didn't have any turnovers in this game. He had 2 touchdowns, and he had over 250 yards, and he had a over 65% completion percentage. This is what Justin Herbert can do if he's given time. The Chargers were able to give him just enough, and he was able to make plays in this game. And then, of course, at the end of the game, that's why you pay him $50 million, is he was able to shake off those defenders and be able to create a huge play for the Chargers. But I do want to give a shout out to 2 players as well on the offensive line. That's Zion Johnson and Mekhi Becton. Interestingly enough, they both had low overall grades from PFF, but their pass blocking grades were actually very good in this game. And overall right now, they're 13th and 4th right now in pass blocking efficiency in the NFL, despite their huge struggles that they have had when it comes to run blocking, which is kind of surprising because Mekhi Becton was someone who came to the Chargers, and I expected him to be a really, really good run blocker and an okay pass blocker. Instead, he's been a pretty good pass blocker and a terrible run blocker. I do think that'll change at some point in the season, but shout out to both of those players. Even Zion Johnson showed some incredible hustle on that last play of the game. He was downfield running with McConkey when McConkey went out of bounds. That just shows his effort to be able to get out there and make plays. These are the type of plays that can earn you a second contract and, more importantly, instill that confidence in the team that you still have a chance late in the game to be able to win. And boy, did the Chargers need that, because the Dolphins were kind of walking all over them, because outside of Johnson and Becton, this offensive line was still a problem. When you look at Austin Deculus, he gave up 4 more pressures and 2 more quarterback hits. The Bradley Bozeman experiment has to come to an end at some point. I don't know what Jim Harbaugh's obsession is with Bradley Bozeman. Bozeman is probably the worst starting center in the NFL right now. He was terrible last year. This year, it's only gotten worse. There were a couple plays in this game where he just completely whiffed on his block and allowed pressure right in Herbert's face. We do not want our star quarterback taking these hits. Bozeman has to either show some sort of improvement in the next week or two, or the Chargers have to start looking towards Andre James. I know James has been inconsistent in his career, but in the type of running scheme that Roman does run, James has had good seasons in the NFL. Bozeman either has to step up or at some point he is going to lose this starting job. But the other shout out I want to give in this game is to Kamani Vidal, because Vidal came into this game with a lot of expectations and pressure on him. Obviously, the loss of Omarion Hampton, the Chargers' first-round pick, was a devastating blow to this team that had just lost Najee Harris the week before to an Achilles tear. Hampton was someone who has looked pretty good so far in his rookie season and was seeming to break out the past few weeks, being the lone bright spot for the team. But then he injured his ankle, and according to most reports, he is going to miss a pretty significant amount of time. But Kamani Vidal was someone who showed up in a big way in this game. When you look at his stat line so far on the season, he has 157 yards, 4 catches, 38 yards in the air, 6 first downs, and a touchdown. Vidal had actually 2 touchdowns in this game, 1 on the ground and 1 in the air. It was obviously a career game for him, but most importantly for the Chargers, this is a semblance of a rushing attack, which is something they have not seen all season long. Now, is this something that's going to be sustainable moving forward? I'm not quite sure, but it is exciting to see a little bit of life in this running game, something that has been lacking all season long. And a big part of the game as well was the Chargers' ability to throw the football, which created those lighter boxes. And for that, we have to give obviously a huge shout out to lad McConkey, who finally had the big game that we were hoping out of him. McConkey is someone who hasn't quite had the same follow-up season that he had his first year, but he's starting to put it together a little bit more now. He's had a touchdown in back-to-back games. He obviously had 100 yards against the Dolphins. McConkey, I think, is kind of the forgotten piece of this Chargers offense right now because Quentin Johnston has been playing at such a high level and because Omarion Hampton was playing at such a high level. But since Johnston missed this game due to an injury, McConkey finally, I think, reasserted to the Chargers that he is still their number one option. I know Johnston has played well, but McConkey's just the better receiver still. That doesn't mean that Johnston should be cut. I'm not asking for him to be traded or anything like that. He's been a very good player for the Chargers this year, but McConkey is the one who should be getting most of the passes, and McConkey is the one who should be getting most of the attention from defenses. The other shout out I want to give in this game is to Cameron Dicker. He is currently the most accurate kicker in NFL history based upon the number of kicks that he has made in his career. He was 5 for 5, and he was huge in this game, hitting that clutch game-winning field goal. But I don't just want to shout out Dicker, I also want to shout out J.K. Scott. An important part that's been missing of this Chargers special teams has been Josh Harris. He's a Pro Bowl specialist, a Pro Bowl snapper, and he's been out for several weeks now. The Chargers have had to put in guys they've been calling up from the practice squad to be able to snap the ball on these kicks. It was a terrible snap back to J.K. Scott, and when I saw it, I was scared that the Chargers were going to miss that game-winning kick, but J.K. Scott made a hell of a catch to be able to snag the football that was behind him, pull it forward, put down a perfect placement for Dicker, who then did his job and hit the kick. So shout out to the Chargers special teams. They're proving in a big way that the Chargers are not the same team that they were over the past few years, where you felt like if you got to a game-winning field goal scenario, they were going to miss it. With Dicker and Scott now, I feel like the Chargers are pretty confident that if they get within field goal range, they're going to be able to nail whatever kick there is. But not everything was perfect for the Chargers. I really feel like it's time for us to start talking about Jesse Minter. I love Jesse Minter. I love everything that he's done. He had a great first season, but now's the time when he has to show that he can do the most important thing an NFL coach can do, and that's adjust. Now, Minter's been excellent his first season, and he was excellent the first 6 weeks of this year. But the past couple of weeks, he has really struggled to be able to put together a winning defensive game plan for the Chargers. And it really showed against the Miami Dolphins, who had over 100 yards on the ground, and Tua was able to lead the team back. Remember, the Dolphins were down 13 points in the fourth quarter, and then Tua led back-to-back touchdown drives. I've already talked plenty in my previous videos about how the Chargers have communication issues in the secondary. The big problem they have right now is on the edge, and it's not their pass rush. Their pass rush actually showed up yesterday. It's their ability to set the edge. Now, the Chargers just traded for Odafe Owe, and he was great yesterday when it comes to pass rushing. He had 4 pressures, he had a huge sack in the game that put the Dolphins behind the sticks, but he was terrible against the run yesterday. You look at his PFF grades, he was second worst on the team, and he had the worst overall of any team on the weekend at 36.6. But obviously, that's not why the Chargers brought him in to play. They brought him in so he could fill Khalil Mack's pass rushing void, but interestingly enough, he's not the only one who's struggling when it comes to defending the run. When you look at Tuli Tuipulotu and Caleb Murphy, both of them have negative grades when it comes to their run defense, and we've seen it multiple times this season. Teams have just been able to get around to the outside on the bolts, and it's caused a huge problem for the safeties who are now in kind of no man's land and have to judge the angle correctly to get to the ball carrier. Derwin James and Elijah Bolden both have struggled to be able to do that, but they shouldn't be asked to do that because your edge rushers should be setting a hard edge and forcing the running back inside. Now, we have to see some sort of improvements here. I'm really disappointed actually with Tuipulotu because as good as he's been as a pass rusher this season, his run defense, which was the calling card for his game, has seemingly just completely disappeared at this point in the year. This was a tough one for the Chargers, but I think it's proven something that every Charger fan knew, and now most NFL teams are starting to realize, and that's as long as you have 10 in the backfield and as long as you have him throwing to 15, you're going to have a chance in this game. Jim Harbaugh knows that. That's why he shouted him out at the end of the game, saying that he's Hercules to me, and that last play will be burned in my mind until they throw dirt over the top of me. We all know Jim is prone to have some hyperbole and exaggerations, but he's correct. As long as the Chargers have 10 and as long as the Chargers have 15, they're going to have a chance in any game that they play. And because of that, the NFL is starting to change their view on the Los Angeles Chargers. Thank you all so much again for watching. I'm Sam Peña with Chargers Digest. Would really appreciate if you guys could show some support and like and subscribe. We're trying to build this channel here from the ground up. And as always, Bolt Nation, remember, bolt up.